Good morning, everybody. For the sixth time this morning, we are coming at you live. And I'm here with some new friends, Paige, Terry, David. And they've promised me it's going to be entertaining. So I don't even know what they're going to present. Maybe I could be a little bit nervous, but they are one of our Rockstar customers, so there will be no nervousness. They're just going to teach you all about how to embrace the LMS. So with that, Terry, Paige, and David, thanks for being with us. I will hand it over to you.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Mark. So today we're going to talk to you about embracing the LMS. Well, you know, right now everybody kind of needs a virtual hug. So what is this really about? It is really about the Canvas experience that we had when we adopted a year and a half, 2 years ago. So now we're going to go on and turn it over to David.
All right. There we go. Who are we? So I am echoing with someone. I'm not sure. But anyway, yeah, so there's 23 colleges in the Virginia Community College system. There are 40 campuses, and we have about 30,000 credit students, over 8,000 faculty. Our FT is about 100,000. And we have about as many non-credit as we do credit, I believe. So you can go to the next slide too. Just keep on moving. Historically, what we did, we were, let's see, the fall of 2018, we started transitioning from a different LMS with just a handful of courses at a handful of colleges. And then in the spring, every college started with more than a handful. And then we went live in the summer of 2019, full bore, everyone doing everything. And I think it's really important to sort of keep this philosophy in mind that, you know, important quotes drive us forward. So where are we now? Good question. It is what? Where are we? What semester is it? We're about to start the full semester of 2020 in a week from today. Almost all of our colleges, one college not, but we don't have a coordinated schedule. We have 33,000 plus courses on the system in the fall. Not all of those will be active, but a good chunk of them will.
So how did we get everyone to heart Canvas? Well, bribery always works. So we thought we'd try a little chocolate and wine. No, not really. We actually did something called the Canvas Roadshow. Now, we didn't sing in the car. However, we could have been known as the traveling circus. We did have a good time as we went around the state. So let's talk about that a little bit. Well, let's talk about data. So we had 14 schools that participated, and that's about 87% of the colleges. So we went around the state and we delivered training to all of these colleges, and we teamed up with other members of our committee, and we went different places, and we did day-long workshops, and we did single workshops. And one of the things that we started to find out is we didn't really want 23 ways of doing the same thing. So we started coming up with ideas on how we could provide consistency within the community college system. This was a lot of work for us. So after the roadshow, we were a little bit tired, and we weren't really sure what was going to happen.
So what were we going to do after the roadshow was over? Well, we did a little bit of reflection, and we started talking about goals. So our committee, which is comprised of all 23 colleges, each have a representative, we started working on LMS best practices, because one of the things that we realized from the roadshow is that many faculty didn't have a good grasp of how to use an LMS correctly. And those that were used to teaching online courses and using an LMS had not been using it to the best advantage of their students. We also looked at correcting things, lessons learned, things from our previous LMS that had actually caused problems for our students, the way lessons were organized, the way teachers delivered content. And we looked for ways to standardize the way all 23 colleges did those things so that we didn't have those problems for our students. We also began to identify, because of that, the need for consistency, not just within each college, but across the whole state, because we do have a program through which students take classes from multiple campuses and multiple colleges. And so we wanted students to have the same experience if they were taking classes from multiple colleges at once. And finally, we decided to look at evaluation. How do our faculty and students feel about Canvas, and how can we improve their experience of the new LMS? So we decided to put together a committee document of LMS best practices. We actually presented this to the state committee that is all of the vice presidents of academics across the state. And they approved this, and it became an unofficial policy for the VCCS. So on your screen is what we call our good LMS best practices. That includes instructor presence within the course through announcements and a biography of the instructor, contact information, instructor interaction plan, etc. Making sure that you post grades regularly into the LMS. Creating a syllabus and making sure that that syllabus is a clear roadmap for students how to go through the course and how to be successful. And making sure that we also publish at the course level, the module level, and for every item that needs to be shown for students. Then we also gave them guidelines for better practices, especially for hybrid and online courses. And then we had best practices for online, which included things like video introductions of faculty members and encouraging students to introduce themselves with audio and video as well.
So from a technical perspective, we sort of had faced the same kinds of issues with the notion that there must be something about my setup. We have these 23 colleges who all want to do things differently, and we had to corral them, and they're very different levels of resources at the colleges. So we have a massive college like Northern Virginia Community College, which is one of the largest in the nation with 60,000 students plus. And then we have tiny colleges like Eastern Shore Community College, which has 600 students on a good day, I think. And so little differential resources, and we had to work some things out in terms of the LMS itself, things that were feasible, possible, difficult. Some of the things we had to work out plans for was terms, because no one's on the same schedule. Blueprints, which we're still working through, how to organize our sub-accounts, the lack of sophistication in permissions, how to make things easily findable, and LTIs, which external tools, managing external tools in such a way that made our compliance office happy. And part of the two core challenges that we had when we actually made that switch was that we hadn't planned for video conferencing or a plagiarism platform. So we had to come up with those solutions fairly quickly.
So, providing consistency with 23 different colleges who look very different, but we needed to allow for creativity and academic freedom. So that was obviously a struggle and a balancing act. And trying to balance all those things still left us feeling a bit blue. And we really didn't know what else we could do. And we were really starting to feel like we just needed a hug. But that's where our teamwork came in, and it truly did save the day.
So the answer to our blues and our frustration was teamwork and letting Canvas do most of the work for us. So we started by agreeing on a universal course navigation because we didn't want students or faculty to be overwhelmed. So by narrowing down the navigation that was available, especially to our students, we made our courses easier to navigate. We made it much more clear to faculty where everything needed to go in their course shells. And we created a system whereby everyone was on the same page. And then we followed that with the implementation of Canvas blueprints, especially for some of the smaller colleges where there aren't very many technical people like us available. It was a wonderful addition to be able to blueprint things like the homepage, a syllabus template, to be able to put a Start Here module together into every single course that had a universal set of information so that students saw the same thing in every course wherever they went. Then we emphasized the need to build all of the content in modules because modules made things simpler for students. It started things chronologically from the top and took them to the end, and when they finish modules, they're done. And this is something that our previous LMS lacked. And so this actually made our students a lot more comfortable taking online courses and using the LMS because it set them up for success. We also found that Studio provided the ability to personalize videos and easily close caption them so that instructors could provide video content to their students, not just in terms of introductions, but also in terms of short remediation videos and other content that helped all of our students, especially in our smaller colleges where one-on-one interaction is harder to get. So after we implemented all of these things, whoa, there it is. We felt better. We went from sad and tired to feeling like, hey, we're actually on the right track. We got our fingers crossed. Things are actually moving in a positive direction. And so one of the things that we learned is that by not going all different ways, the wrong way, not choosing to each insist on our own way, my way, but in doing the right thing and cooperating together as a group, the 23 colleges actually wound up going in the right direction and finding success for everyone.
Then, now that's not as the world turns, then we ended up in March of this year. Well, once again, our team came through and really, really helped us.
So here in Virginia, COVID basically started in lockdown on March 13th, which was at the end of a week. You all may remember that was Friday the 13th. So the following Monday, we actually began a series of webinars. And for 6 weeks, we delivered 3 to 4 webinars a day, every day as a team. So some of those webinars were during the workday when faculty would be not, because they weren't at work anymore, they could take some webinars during the day. We also had open office hours during the day, and at night we did webinars for adjunct faculty who might still be working a full-time job, either virtually or face-to-face. We also didn't just train faculty. We now had to train staff and administration because we had so many other members of our community who needed the ability to put content somewhere, to communicate somewhere, and they had never looked at Canvas before. So in addition to training thousands of faculty members who needed to suddenly move online, we were working with our staff and administration to create sandbox courses that they could use for organizations and for department training. We had to do a lot of course development. We worked with department chairs in some cases. At smaller schools, we worked with individual faculty to help them get their classes online because we had a lot of faculty, even at that point, who had never taught online and never really put anything in the LMS. They were face-to-face teachers. They'd always been face-to-face teachers. And so there was a lot of hand-holding that had to be done on top of all of the training. We encouraged them to use Google for file storage because this was an easy access for everybody. We could share files there and also share them with students without taking up file storage in the LMS. And we had lots of questions from these faculty members suddenly moving online. Is there a tool in Canvas that will do? And you fill in the blank, and the do's were all sorts of things. Thankfully, we had spent a lot of time on LTIs with David's help, and we had a lot of options to offer them. And where we didn't have options, we began looking for new tools for them to be able to use going forward. But our biggest and most important tool was Zoom, because we now had thousands and thousands of faculty delivering to hundreds of thousands of students. And we needed to be able to communicate with them to deliver synchronous as well as asynchronous content. So we had recordings that we needed to do, and we had huge security and policy updates that needed to be done before Zoom could be used and used with our students in a way that we were comfortable. So we talked about the differences between Zoom and Studio. What were the best practices and the best usages for each? And where do you want to store content? If you record something in Zoom, where do you want to put that? If you record something in Studio, where do you want to put that? So we worked with all of our faculty at all 23 colleges to try to iron all of those things out so that they had a clear understanding of what all of our video conferencing options would do for them.
So between April and the beginning of May, we did 90 plus webinars. We had about 4,000 plus or minus faculty attend, and I think we spent about 16,970,000 hours in Zoom. And so we were very busy. We became very important people, and we generally went around looking pretty much like this. Some days we may still be here, but this is kind of where we felt like we were between March and the beginning of May. So what kind of webinars were we offering? We tried to offer everything we could possibly think of. So these are some of the names of the webinars. You can see that we covered everything under the sun. We covered Google, we covered rubrics, we covered modules, we covered gradebook, we covered Canvas Mobile, we covered groups, we covered Zoom, we covered best practices, and so on, and quizzes, and Google Docs, and so on, and there's more. And the new rich content editor, and Zoom bombing, and accessibility, and 3 ways to record your lectures, and well, and we had more, but that was all I really wanted to put on the slide, because at this point, we were all feeling just a little bit chaotic.
So why did we choose the topics that we did? Well, we obviously started with Canvas with the LMS, and we started with Canvas Basics the very first day because we knew that we did have faculty who had always been face-to-face, had never taught online, and would need the most help the fastest. So we started with that. But we also knew that even those who had used the LMS before, maybe in limited ways, weren't prepared to deliver their content fully online. So we started with the LMS and emphasized the importance of some of its tools and how those tools were going to help us with the immediate transition to virtual learning. Then we looked at Google because, as I said a minute ago, Google Docs and slides and sheets create the ability to share content and also gave us the ability to help teachers create presentations for synchronous course delivery in the instances where that was a requirement. We also did trainings in Zoom because even though Zoom was something that some of our colleges were familiar with, we had actually just signed an enterprise contract for the whole system a couple of months, well, I guess about 4 or 5 months before COVID happened. But we had a lot of people who had never had occasion to host a Zoom meeting before. So we needed to not only explain how to start a meeting, how to set up a meeting, but also the settings that needed to be turned on and what settings you wanted to use for engagement with your students, what security settings you wanted to make sure were either turned on or turned off. Once the security shield was implemented by Zoom, we had to explain that, how to avoid Zoom bombing, because we did have a couple of Zoom bombing instances early in the COVID time period, And we also wanted to make sure that faculty were prepared if we had to stay online for the rest of the calendar year, they could deliver real-time classes going forward. So as we went along, we discovered that we had left some things out, believe it or not, from that huge long list. One of those was Zoom security, because we had a lot of faculty who didn't understand why some things didn't work or why they didn't work the way they thought they should. So we had to explain not only our own policies that had been created, but we also had to explain how to use the security features in Zoom to protect themselves and their students. We had to go back and use organizations and department shells to help organize some of the people who were not only using Canvas for the first time, but were also using Zoom for the first time, and put content in orgs and in department shells for those groups. We also had workforce people who suddenly could not do all of their teaching and all of their learning face-to-face. So we had our non-credit workforce partners looking for help, both in Canvas and in Zoom. So we had workforce added to our plate. And finally, we had our coaches and advisors, because all of our ramp up to the fall 2020 semester had to be done virtually. So all 23 colleges had people in student services, coaches who normally go to some of our high schools because we have a very robust dual enrollment program here in Virginia. And the advisors at each of the colleges needed to know, how do I use the LMS? How do I use Zoom in order to serve our students until we can see them in a face-to-face setting? And so at the end of all of that, we were feeling a little bit like we'd been sprayed in the face with a water hose. Maybe a fire hose would be more appropriate, but we weren't quite as frustrated and tired as we had been back in March.
So we were feeling a little bit refreshed, although slightly damp. So we decided that we weren't through providing opportunities for faculty and staff for training. So we decided we would kick it up a notch, and we were going to offer a new series. And we reached out and we thought about it again, and we decided that Canvas was where we wanted to be. And so Canvas gave us a great big hug, and then we introduced our new series.
So in June, we decided to change tack just a little bit, and we now offered a Canvas series focused on pedagogy. So we offered this series twice, in June and in August, to give faculty maximum opportunities to participate and to learn both some things about the LMS that they didn't know, but also to learn online pedagogy. So there were 7 different webinars originally on creating objectives, using modules, LMS best practices, authentic assessments, Canvas rubrics, quizzes in Canvas, and using the gradebook and student feedback in the LMS. In this way, we wanted to emphasize the tools that Canvas offers, but that supports online pedagogy in both fully online and synchronous online courses. And then we realized we had left something out because we still needed more Zoom. So we added an 8th session to our pedagogy series that was Zoom specific, especially for using engagement tools to create online best practices using synchronous course delivery.
So while our intentions were good, sometimes we are misunderstood. We had a lot of faculty as students who still struggle with some of the basics in terms of logging onto systems, knowing that systems exist, and even, you know, logging into Zoom, logging into Canvas. It's like, oh, what's Canvas? And so bringing them into these courses was presented its own set of challenges. Let's put it that way. Yeah. But that was just a little hiccup. We worked it out.
We did. And through all of this, we offered multiple ways for faculty to engage. And they could come to office hours that we had specifically for faculty, where they could come and ask questions and leave. And we could demonstrate to them exactly what we were talking about. We also know that all of us when we were in the building never had as many faculty stop in, ask questions, pop by, send emails, even other departments who were reaching out to us to provide them with training, as well as any kind of small groups, specifically if using Canvas and Zoom and synchronous sessions and other tools such as a Wacom tablet, and all of these kinds of things started to roll together. But all of it was geared in providing a very smooth online transition for students. And a lot of our students were feeling very uneasy, and our faculty were uneasy. And so giving them all of these tools helped to fill up their toolbox so that in the fall they were much more comfortable, and the students were comfortable, and that they knew where they could go to find things, and they could go back and review webinars and things like that. So we've done lots of different kinds of things, but all of it was to kind of put us in the right direction so that we were offering consistent training to faculty, to staff, and all of that is so that the students would also have a consistent experience. So where do we go now? Well, that's a great question. And truthfully, we're not sure, and we pretty much take it day to day. And we meet using Zoom. We meet or talk and chat in Slack. We do all kinds of, but there is a group of us. And again, this is all about teamwork. This was not a 3 people show by any means. We had a lot of help from all of our committee members in ELIT. But some of the things that we know that we're coming up is that Virginia has now adopted K-12 has adopted Canvas. So because of this, we now have 150 new instances of Canvas in Virginia, and we know that our littles are coming up and they're going to be in Canvas before they ever get to the community college system or any of our four-year institutions. So we're thinking that it's about 45,000 faculty that are now in Canvas, as well as over 1 million students. So we know that we have a lot of partners who could use our help, as well as we can learn from them. So now we're kind of in the place where our emotions have kind of run back and forth depending on the day, and we kind of feel like we've covered everything, and it seems that we finally started to get a handle on things, and hopefully our partners, both in the VCCS and in Virginia, are going to reach out and spend some time so that we can keep that consistent experience all through a student's educational career.
So, questions that remain for us. The number one most important question: how do we get access to some cloning technology? We need to clone David, and we need to clone ourselves because we are tired people. But more importantly, will teaching ever revert to face-to-face? And if not, what does that mean for us both as a community college system, and how do we prepare both our faculty and our students for a completely different experience going forward into the future? How do we expand our use of teaching tools? What LTI tools can we add to those that we already offer to give faculty as many options as possible to deliver their content to students in a way that feels most authentic to them? And how do we get adoption of further best practices? Our committee is going to be working this fall on a second version of our LMS best practices document, and we're going to hopefully be getting more granular into the types of best practices that we would like to see going forward, especially if late in the fall it looks like we're going to be virtual again for spring 2021. So we hope you liked our story. That is the story of our embracing the new Canvas LMS. And we do really love it. I just want to say that when we first heard that we had to switch LMSs, I'd actually only been in this position for 4 months and I nearly had a stroke. But we actually have found it to be one of the greatest experiences that we've had. And we enjoy teaching it to other people because we feel like this is giving our faculty and our students the best possible opportunity to create a learning experience that's a positive one.
Love it. Paige, you look like you were going to say something so astute right there. I'm going to stop.
No, I was just going to say, we did have a lot of fun with the presentation, but we wanted to keep it light because things are very serious anyway. But we have really found that Canvas has helped us tremendously, and we have used it or maybe abused it in some cases to the extent that we are just wanting to provide what we can for both faculty and students.
Awesome. Fantastic presentation. I love that David's avatar there is Control Z. That's fantastic. So a couple of quick questions for you. Question number one, for so many of these educators who are out there and they're being thrown, an LMS is being thrown in their face kind of at the last minute. Where do you start? If you were in their place, you were in this kind of administrator's job of how do I roll this out to people now? Where should they even begin? Because I know we've got a lot of educators who are a little bit frustrated, feel like, oh, this was thrown at me last minute. Would love to get any of your thoughts on where should they really start and begin?
So I believe that really starting in modules, it's not when you're jumping into the frying pan, you may as well jump in with both feet and start in modules, because from there you can teach them how to build. And and I talk to them about it as an outline. So you want to put things in and kind of visually think about where you're going. And it's really easy to think about it when you talk about, think about it as, and I'm going to age myself here, as a trapper keeper. So you put everything in the trapper keeper that goes in in that week, in that module. And so that it stays all together so that you don't have students going all over the place looking for things. The other thing I talk to them about is putting in a module for parents, regardless of the age of the student. I always think that parents are going to be in there. So put in that module for the parents and call it for parents, and give them some ideas and some tips on where to go. I know Terry has some other ideas she'd like to add.
Yeah, so when we developed the LMS best practices, I think one of the most important things for us was not necessarily for faculty, but for us as instructional designers, to create a template that supported students and faculty so that they didn't have as much work to do. So I think Paige is right. From the faculty perspective, modules is the place to start. But from a college perspective, you start with a template that provides all of the basic design principles that are necessary for faculty so that their work is minimal. They are the content experts, but they are not the design experts. And that's our responsibility to get that done for them ahead of time, so that when they log into their course shell, all of that basic stuff is already done for them. They fill in their name and their office number and their phone number, and then they get right on rocking with the modules, and there's not as much work for them. It's not as overwhelming.
And I'd add, sorry, you're muted. I can't hear you anyway, Mark, because you're muted, but that you don't have to do it all, right? I mean, you students want to see you. They want to see a picture of you. They'd love to see a video of you. They are anxious. Faculty are anxious. Students are anxious. So your presence as an instructor in that course. So it's not just like dumping a textbook on someone, but it's, hey, here I am. I am here for you. I want you to succeed. Record a video saying hi. That is a place to start, right? You don't have to do it all in the first week or the first day. You got to start somewhere.
I love that you guys are doing some cool things with templates as well. So often we see educators who get frustrated with, there's a big craze in elementary right now for people to build these really elaborate Bitmoji pages. And I've seen many that are very incredible. They look just like, wow. But I think that we sometimes get so worried and stuck on what that design piece looks like, and then forget that, oh, wait, the important part is I have to teach. So talk to me about the decision that you guys made around templates. Why did you decide to provide templates to all your different colleges?
Well, I think to start with, you need to understand that the VCCS, as David mentioned earlier, is very diverse. Northern Virginia Community College has like 60,000 students, and they have like 15 instructional designers full-time, and they have a huge staff of people to support faculty. But we also have a couple of colleges that don't even have a full-time instructional designer. They've got a faculty member who does some instructional design or some LMS administration on the side. So as a group, deciding that templates was a way to help each other and to help our faculty, it was sort of a lifesaver for everybody, because some of our colleges don't have the ability to handhold faculty through this process, especially when everyone is so anxious right now. So templates just make sense for many of our colleges, including my own, because I wear like 5 hats at my college, and I manage to juggle my plates most of the time. They only hit the floor about once a week. But it just helps faculty to have something to start out with and to build within, because it gives them a framework, like Paige said earlier.
And I'm sure Paige will have more to say, but we also had a pretty robust technical framework around templating in the previous LMS. And so when we came to Canvas, we expected to do the same, and we were able to create the same infrastructure for templating, so that it's not a big lift for our instructional designers and support people to actually implement the templates.
And the templates, are not only that, have even gone further into actually moving into blueprints that are now moving into building master courses, so that these master courses are going to be the blueprint, so that when an adjunct is hired at the 11th hour, they aren't going to sit down to a completely empty Canvas course. They're going to have all of the material there for them, and they're going to have information on how to do it, and they can spend their time in the content and teaching rather than trying to pull in resources and put things together. And it really allows them to fully engage with their students and the content, and not necessarily be so worried about the tools, which is another reason that templating helps, because it takes part of that technology learning out of the equation, and it gives people more time to really focus on how to engage with students and how to provide, feedback, and they can spend that time during the week in their course, not necessarily in their course building next week's stuff. So that's another reason that we've kind of all tried to, move in that direction, and we've done a really great job as far, it's a lot. 23 different colleges, that's a lot.
Yeah, you're right. Some of the admins and others who are listening in on this are probably saying, oh my goodness, I thought that my one school was a crazy lift, which it is. So you can only imagine what 23 is like. Big shout out to our friends at VCCS. They're just doing incredible things, and they're just fun. If you watch this presentation, you're thinking, oh, I would like to work with Paige and Terry and David. There's not a lot of stuffiness over there. You're right. There is not any stuffiness. Big thanks to them again. Love having them on the show. We're going to be doing a case study with them shortly, so look for that. And thanks again for joining, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow morning at 10:30 a.m. Talk to you then. See ya.